Hey everyone, welcome back to Cincinnati Zoo Tales. I'm Jenna.
And I'm Mark. We appreciate you guys tuning in for another episode with us. Jenna, today we're being joined by one of our registered veterinary technicians, Janell Duvall. They've got a crazy interesting job here at the zoo. They work all over the place with every species of animal that you can imagine we have here. Janell, I'm excited to hear about just your day-to-day job, but thanks for joining us. We appreciate you taking the time to do so.
Yeah, thank you. I'm excited to be here.
I'm sure you guys are really busy, but I'm really interested to hear from you because I honestly don't know exactly what you do all day long, and you're one of our newer vet techs here, so I personally haven't gotten to work with you a ton, but I know you do a lot with Teresa and the giraffe, and each vet tech kind of takes their own specialty area, it seems like, as far as training or kind of who you work with. So we want to hear all about that and what you do on a daily basis here. But I don't know about you guys, but growing up, I didn't think of zookeeping as a job. I definitely didn't think of being a vet tech in a zoo. And we talk about all the time how hard it is to become a zookeeper and how rare these jobs are. But you're one of 3 at a fairly large zoo. We're one of 60. I don't know how many full-time keepers there are. So your job is really hard to come by. So did you know about that growing up? How did you get into becoming a vet tech in general and end up here and that sort of thing?
So I kind of grew up for a love of animals, like everybody does, but it kind of grew into kind of a love for medicine in a sense too. So I started off working at a small animal clinic, so with cats and dogs mainly. I didn't have a lot of exotic animal experience, and the state that I live in kind of had a lax in rules, a sense, compared to other states, so I was allowed to do a lot of things that I didn't have to go to school for. It was kind of on-the-job training.
Sometimes is the best, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, you learn tips and tricks of the trade that you don't necessarily learn in school. So I did that for a really long time, and then it kind of, my love and passion for it was kind of dying out, and I was like, I need something else. I need something to kind of reignite that fire in me and find something. So I decided to enroll in school, and the University of Cincinnati has a small program here that...
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, that has been around for quite a while, 50 years. And so I enrolled there. It's a 2-year program, so you graduate with an associate's degree. And then you do have to take a national boards exam to become technically licensed. And so I did that whole thing, and then graduated, took my boards, passed my boards, and then during school I did an internship at a zoo, and that's kind of where I found my this is amazing, I want to keep doing this, and why am I not doing this already? So I kind of pursued that, and it took a little while to find something because, like you said earlier, there's not a lot of positions open, and usually when people get in them, they don't leave them. So I had a position open, and I applied for it, and I got it, and that's kind of what deterred me, and then here I am.
So when you were going to University of Cincinnati, was that focused on exotics, or was that regular vet text? I shouldn't say that, but your typical domestic animals?
Yeah, so the majority of the people that go to school, that's typically where they're going to end up, just because there's more of a need for that rather than in a zoo, because there's sometimes only some zoos don't even have technicians, or they are lucky to have one, and so it's just they focus more on what you're going to use, and then that's why they highly recommend doing internships, externships, or volunteering, something like that, to get experience, because you can know how to collect blood from a certain animal on a certain vessel or a vein, but it's not always it doesn't always translate in different species.
Sure.
Right, I can't imagine getting blood from a snake, for example. You can't see their veins. Can you feel them?
No. There's usually one
scales
vein. Yeah. And so there's a lot to kind of there's a lot more to think about when you're doing things with exotics. One, because some of them are dangerous.
Yeah.
You can't always share the same space with them. And so you kind of have to think outside the box too, which was an added benefit / challenge to the job.
Yeah, blessing and a curse, right?
Right, because you're just not walking into an exam room saying hi to a client with their dog, and petting the dog, and the dog's jumping all over you and happy to see you. It's not always that case here, so we kind of have to use, different methods or techniques to do what's best for us and safe for them, and vice versa.
Good.
Where was your internship? Was it here?
Actually, I did with school, I was at the Jacksonville Zoo.
Okay, gotcha.
For a little bit, and then that was where my first job was.
Oh, okay.
But in the meantime, while I was looking for a job in the zoo world, I did do like a post-grad internship here with the vet staff. So.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So then when you graduate and then you get a job with like cats and dogs and that sort of thing, and then you're volunteering, like, do you just learn by watching? Did they let you do much? Like, how was that? As a volunteer here, there are certain limitations, you know, like you mentioned, there are dangerous animals, and as a volunteer, there's liabilities and things, so we can't always do things. Did you, like, kind of learn by watching and then get the job and then you're allowed to try things, or?
I think it's dependent upon where you're at
okay.
and, like, their comfort level. In my personal philosophy is, like, you're not going to be able to learn it if you're not doing it. Obviously, we want everyone to stay as safe as possible. So if it's putting someone in an unsafe sort of situation, it's not worth it.
Right.
And so it's just kind of, we work around those things, and we do our best. But I think that I try, especially with the interns that we take, really hard to make sure that they get a good experience, even from like the husbandry side of things and the medical side of things.
Yeah, I just think it's interesting because we always say the same thing, like, volunteer, do an internship, do something. So the zoo field in general, if you're interested in any sort of position in regards to animals, like, try and get your foot in the door. And it's not always about schooling. Like, sometimes it's more about experience and networking, of course, we've talked about too. So you said you grew up loving animals and then kind of learned to love medicine or fell in love with medicine. That's the part of this job that is probably my least favorite. Like, it stresses me out. So I'm always so interested when people like that and they feel excited about it. I'm like, oh my gosh, we have to do anesthesia on this animal today, and I'm so worried about a million things. So, like, what do you think made you interested in that, or how do you find comfort and not feel the stress that I do?
Well, I think it comes with, like, doing it for as long as I've done it. Okay. Obviously, there's still situations that, like, if it doesn't make you nervous, then, like, you're too comfortable.
That's a good point.
I just, I feel like the more experience I get, the more comfortable I'll get. But, like, I could easily say the same thing about, like, the husbandry side of taking care of these animals. Like, that would stress me out because I'm like, is this normal behavior? I don't know. So it just kind of, you know, like, you guys are the experts in that, and then, like, you come to us with, like, hey, so-and-so's having this problem today. Is this a concern or not? So it's, I think it's a two-way street sometimes.
Yes, no, definitely. We have to work together, and people think that because we take care of animals that we might know how to diagnose something. I'm like, no, I just say, that's not normal. I'm going to let vet staff know, and then you guys come check it out for us. But we all have our roles and have to work together, and I think that's probably one of the coolest things we've started recently. I don't know if recent is the right word, but more often now and in the last 10 years of vet techs and keepers working together on training. And I don't know, do you enjoy that part of the job?
Absolutely. If it's something that I can do something for an animal, like, no matter what it is, give an injection, collect a blood sample, even something as small as, like, take a medication orally, just trying to do something to make our jobs a little less stressful so we don't have to do anesthesia or find another way or do something that might be a little bit more stressful to the animal. So I think that it's a rewarding sort of part of the job too, because you're like, wow, we worked really hard and we were able to do all of these things.
Yeah, you can see, like, the steps get to the finished progress of, like, oh, the giraffe let us lift their foot today, or let us take an x-ray today, and 10 months ago they were scared of this machine.
And it's just, like, I think it's just as exciting for you guys as it is for us. Because we're like, we worked so hard for that. So.
Yeah, definitely. That's something that's really interesting for me always, is just, like, seeing the progress, because, you know, when we talk about taking a blood sample from an animal or hoof care on a giraffe or whatever, these aren't just things that we're going in one time and we're just knocking it out. It's like, no, we put in weeks, sometimes months, sometimes even years of effort, and the vet techs will meet us once, twice, 3 times a week, sometimes even, just to work on those behaviors. And, like, when you're in it, it's interesting for me to, like, when I go over to Hippo, an area that I'm not quite over there as much, and I can see the progress, because, like, when you're in it on the day-to-day, it's harder to see the progress. But then when you can take a step back and you see week to week or month to month, you're like, wow, they've made a lot of progress over here. They must have been putting in a lot of work.
Yeah, and that's always fun, like, having you guys come over and the animals at first maybe being nervous, but a month later, like, they're comfortable with you, so that's one of the important parts of us working with you, and that's where we see you the most, at least for me personally.
Yeah.
Thankfully, knock on wood, we don't do procedures too often because most of the time we have healthy animals, or, you know, obviously there are yearly exams and stuff like that, but what are you doing behind the scenes, or on a daily basis? You come to work, and how does your day look?
You know, that's a really challenging question, but it's also one of the reasons why I love zoo medicine is because our days are so different. You know, we do have a pretty detailed schedule of, like a preventative care schedule that we follow, but we also keep like a weekly, monthly calendar of like, okay, we have these procedures happening at this certain time, but that doesn't mean that, you know, we can have a problem arise that morning and have to deal with that, and again, do a procedure in the afternoon. But for the most part, we do, as far as preventative care, so we'll do like our just general exams where we'll collect blood samples on them for just routine testing, save it for testing for potential diseases or things down the road, as well as like take x-rays on them, get baseline pictures to make sure that the images look okay. That way, if we do turn up sick in 6 months, we kind of have what normal looks like for that animal. And then, of course, we'll do vaccines or anything like that at that time. And that usually takes up the majority of our morning.
Yeah.
And then, you know, into lunchtime and then the afternoon, we will reserve for, like, training sessions. We prep for the next day, depending on what is planned or scheduled. And then make medication, respond to refills. So we're kind of like also pharmacists.
Yeah, you are.
In a sense. So we can't prescribe medication, but we do like fill any of the requests that you guys send in to us. So that can be time consuming, depending on what it is, and then trying to get that to you guys too. And then of course we do the not so fun stuff where we have to enter in results into ZIMS, or we keep our like medical records and things like that, so that way we can follow up with and just record keeping essentially, so that can be slightly time consuming and unfortunately the not as exciting part of the job, but it is unfortunately part of it. So
speaking of like the not so glamorous side, something I wanted to ask you about that we get to just send off and not worry about. What's it like for you guys running fecal samples? I know you're like testing for parasites and all this kind of stuff, but we each have like a quote-unquote fecal month where our department has to collect a sample from every single one of our animals, send it to you guys, and I always got to imagine, like, that's so much work on your end, right? Processing all these samples.
And what are you doing with the fecal samples? Like, what do you swab them? Do you tell the listeners what it's like?
The glorious part of the job. So it's we do something called a fecal flotation. So we take I think technically it's roughly 2 grams of whatever stool sample you get. Sometimes that's not always the case because birds don't produce.
I was just going to say, the birds are so hard to collect.
So we kind of just take what we can get. That's just, that's just part of it. But we do something called a fecal float, and essentially we mix it with a certain solution, has to sit for 10 or 15 minutes, and then we read it under a microscope slide, essentially, and we're looking for eggs or larvae of certain parasites. Typically is what we see here, and then obviously we'll be like, hey, we need to treat this,
right.
Or if you don't hear from us, no news is good news.
It's a good thing, yeah.
So it's really not super exciting, but they can be awfully smelly, that's for sure.
What's the smelliest? Does one come to mind?
It's usually the primates, like the gorillas.
Yes, I've talked about that before. Their poop is just too human.
Or a lot of the carnivore poop is pretty nasty too, so.
I was actually having this conversation with Eric and Wendy yesterday, 2 of our coworkers, and it's so funny how, okay, so I think lion poop smells the worst in our department, and Janelle shaking her head, she agrees, and Wendy was like, what? And Wendy's our primary lion person, and so I think she just loves the lions, and she's used to it, and it doesn't bother her, and I'm like, it is by far the worst. Maybe ostrich, theirs is just gross. I won't even try and describe it to you guys, but it's a lot, all at once. And she was like, yeah, I think meerkat is the worst. I'm like, I don't even know what it smells like. It doesn't have a smell. And I'm like, I guess the building has a smell to it, but I don't think it's poop. I think it's them, or they have anal glands that they mark things with. I'm like, what? I never would have thought anyone would say meerkat, but she was like, yeah, I think omnivore is the worst. So what would you say?
To me, it's not even that it's like the worst smell, but it's just so overpowering as giraffe. Like, the minute you walk in that barn, I mean, you're just like hit the minute you walk in with the scent, and it sticks to your clothes, and like you come home and everyone can smell you.
See,
like,
I would say that about elephant.
Oh yes,
yeah,
100%.
elephant.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I've worked in quite a few areas in this zoo, and elephant 100% is the strongest, sticks with you the most, and like you just can't get rid of it. Like you could shower and you'll still smell like it, but I don't think it smells bad because it's mostly hay. It doesn't smell good.
Yes,
but it's not like I don't want to plug my
unbearable.
nose. Yes,
I think the same about giraffe.
And then giraffe, I think their urine is very like strong and like ammonia or something, and that sticks to you. But I wouldn't say it grosses me out. But I totally agree with you that in our department, 100% giraffe, like you smell like giraffe if you're in there for 10 minutes.
Yeah, definitely. Like whenever we sit down for lunch, you don't even have to know who worked routine that day. You can know exactly who's on the giraffe routine just based on who. Who
we get that a lot in the hospital too, because like people will come back and I'm like, oh, were you just over at primate? So yeah, we get it. We do it a lot too.
Oh man, that's funny.
Yeah, I don't know, but ostrich is pretty gross.
Ostrich, yeah, those girls are.
It's very
special.
Strong. It's very smelly, and it's.
Just the sound of it
solid.
too. Yeah, they defecate standing up, so just the sound of it hitting the ground is something unique.
But they're birds, so they also have urates at the same time. So it's a lot. It's both solid and not solid. So we'll move on from that. But that's part of your job is you help keep our animals healthy by testing their fecals and looking for parasites and things like that. For anyone who was considering, like, maybe they're in high school or college and they wanted to get into this field, what do you think would be the hardest part? Is it learning the medications, or do the veterinarians mostly have to know how the drugs work and you guys are more doing, like, the counting and the making sure it's the right pill? Is it knowing how to draw blood? Is it knowing how to give an injection? Like, what would you say is the hardest? I
would personally think that everyone has their, like, favorite part of being a tech and then their least favorite part of being a tech. And in school we have to kind of like learn what specific drugs do, any sort of counter like reactions that could potentially happen, or what you should do if something is they are having a reaction, and typically it is the vet's responsibility to take care of that, and we just kind of follow guidelines. But it's good for us to know, so that way we kind of know what's gonna happen or potentially can happen, so that way we can also be prepared to fix whatever we may need to be fixing.
Like when we come to you with questions.
Yes, exactly.
We're seeing this side effect and you guys can tell us it's normal.
Yes,
okay.
Exactly. So being in zoo medicine is so different than being in small animal medicine. When I was in small animal medicine, I would 100% say, like, put me in surgery so I don't have to have conversations with clients all day long.
Oh, okay.
Just because that was it drains you after a while.
Yeah, for sure.
Just having to talk constantly and answer questions constantly.
And I'm sure most people, unless it's just an annual exam, are stressed. If they're coming in with a sick animal, they probably aren't at their best.
Exactly. So that can be challenging. You do learn a lot from those situations and those experiences, for sure. But I think my least favorite probably is doing, like, necropsies.
And see, I bet some people would say that's their favorite. Like, and we have some people on our team that go to necropsies. For anyone who doesn't know what that is, it's an autopsy for an animal. So when an animal passes, we do a necropsy, find out the reason that caused their death, and, you know, we can learn from it. Or sometimes you find nothing and it's natural causes or old age, that sort of thing. And sometimes it's a mystery and we never find out, and those are the hardest cases for us. But yeah, some of our teammates want to go and watch, and I'm like, absolutely not. Like, that's nothing. So is it because it's emotional for you, or
it's
is
not
it
emotional? It's just and maybe it's like emotional in a way of, like, it's not necessarily like a pretty sort of like situation, but it's a fantastic way to learn anatomy, to learn about the animals that you're taking care of.
And I think that's why some of the keepers like it.
It's like you see the inside of an animal that you typically wouldn't, and I think it's a great way to learn. It's just not for me.
Yeah.
Like, I'd rather be on the other side of things. Like, okay, we have an animal down. We need to take care of this. Like, emergency, what are we doing? Rather than
okay, so that's
picking
not
apart,
stressing you out.
No.
Or, okay,
Yeah.
so you're good with emergencies.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I can usually handle those pretty well for the most part.
That's good.
Yeah.
That we need those kind of people around, because I don't think we all respond well in those type of situations.
Yeah, and I think it depends on the, yeah.
I think everyone's kind of emotions, and everyone handles that sort of, any sort of emergent situation in a different, they just handle it in their own specific way, and so sometimes it's overwhelming, and sometimes they have, like, no idea what to do, and so it's definitely, like, something that it's just ingrained in me. I'm like, okay, we gotta go, this is what we're doing.
That's a really important.
Yeah, yeah.
I was gonna say talent. I don't know if that's a talent.
It's like an
Skill?
innate
Skill to have.
skill.
Yes. So I doubt your answer would be that emergencies are your favorite, but I get what you mean by enjoying them. Is there, like, are you good at them and that feels good?
I just
Is there
feel
something
like
that
I'm
you?
pretty level-headed when it comes to it, and, like, I can set my emotions aside for, you know, like, I don't know, gosh, this is a meerkat, and I really love meerkats, but, like, we're having a major problem right now, and, like, I can set that aside and be like, okay, what do we have to do? What's
Focus.
going on?
Yes.
Yeah.
So would that be your favorite aspect of the job, or what would be like if you came to work today, and somebody was like, "You get to do this," you'd be like, "That's my favorite thing."
I actually, like, thoroughly love, like, in-field procedures.
Okay.
So, like, some of our animals are small enough that they can come back to the hospital. Like, we did a penguin toe amputation yesterday. And so obviously she was small enough that we could just crate her up and she could come back to the hospital. Unfortunately, we can't do that with a giraffe or, you know, any of the hippos or anything like that. So, like, doing things in the field kind of help you be a little bit more, you can learn a lot because you have to prepare for more than what you would expect to happen, but you also kind of have to be flexible, because if you don't have something, you go, okay, well, what can I do next, or what's the other option I have if I don't have this instrument to do this.
Right, where the hospital houses all of that,
Yeah.
but when you're bringing it to the animal, you don't always know exactly what to expect.
Yeah.
Huh, it's so interesting to me how everyone likes different parts of the job, and some people, like, look forward to a procedure or, like, catching an animal if they have to, just to, you know, like some at other zoos, sometimes they catch, like, antelope, and they go in and just, they grab onto their horns and they give them a vaccine and they let them go, and I'm like, I would no, I'll do anything else. I'll be like, guys, I will do your routine, unless you're going to fire me for not doing this now. I've actually helped hand grab, like, giraffe and stuff, but
It's still
they're
scary.
babies, and it's a lot, and, like, something with horns and just, like, really breakable, I wouldn't want to hurt the animal, mostly. So, yeah, but other people think it's really exciting and, like, an adventure, and I'm like, no, thank you.
Well, I think that's what makes up, like, a good team.
Exactly.
We have 3 technicians on our team, and so I think, you know, I like that, doing procedures and field procedures, and maybe one of our other technicians is really in love with doing lab work, and so she's like, I have all the blood samples, I'm going to disappear to the lab and do what I need to do in there.
Yeah.
So I think that's what kind of, like, is helpful for our team, because we all kind of have our own passion for what we like doing.
I was wondering if it evened out for you guys or not.
It kind of balances each other out.
Yeah, we try to be fair, too, and not, like, make one person do all
Right.
of these by any means, because procedures can be a lot, for sure, for one person in general. But, like, we are a pretty good team.
So, again, for somebody who's considering this as a career, when you are doing a procedure, can you explain or, like, kind of help them visualize what you would be doing? So, say the vets are doing some sort of surgery. What would you, like a spay or a neuter, like, what would your job be?
So, typically we are monitoring anesthesia, so we're making sure that that animal is at a safe plane of anesthesia, that they're not too deep that it's going to cause a potential death, or they're not too light where they're waking up on the surgeon. So that's usually part of the technician's job. And you're also doing a lot of the prep work for that animal too. So, like, you can't just put them on a surgery table and they're good to go. You kind of have to clip fur away, or whatever species it is, scrub the area, make it as clean as possible, so that when they are making an incision for whatever surgery is happening, that we're hopefully not going to introduce any sort of infection or bacteria into that wound or incision. And usually it's, like, post-operatively care too, in a small animal world is what I picture as post-operative care. Here is more like we usually give them back to the keepers, and we're like, they're awake enough, and we just need you to make sure that they're good to go for the night. But in general, too, you know, we learn radiology is a huge part of our job, so we have to know proper positioning for how to take x-rays if we're doing chest x-rays or abdominal x-rays, or even like we have a concern about like a broken bone or something like that, positioning appropriately for that. And even dental x-rays. We recently got a new dental x-ray unit machine, so that's super exciting. So we can actually take good dental x-rays, and that's a task in of itself because the positioning for that can be really difficult. Oh. It's not like you can just go to your dentist and put it in your mouth and then say, just bite down.
Right.
So it's a little different for those guys. So that's a huge part of our job. Blood collection is a huge part of any sort of procedure too. So like just knowing like main vessels or veins that you can use to draw blood from. That's kind of how I learned though, is because I have 2 other technicians who have been here for quite a while, and so they have a good amount of skill and knowledge in their little tool belt. So that was helpful for me because I was like, I don't know what a bird is. So that was super helpful. But that, giving injections, or if you have a sick animal that you're doing IV fluids, placing an IV catheter, or even doing like a blood transfusion that we've done quite a few times recently on 2 different species. So just kind of knowing what that looks like, the setup, how to run it.
That's impressive.
Yeah, it can be a lot. Like it's like a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And you know, that's why our days differ so much, because we might have a sick animal that needs a blood transfusion, and so that kind of puts a stop to whatever else we had planned for the day if it was just a routine thing.
Right.
To tackle whatever task we have at hand. So
yeah.
I feel like it's so important to stress like the amount of information and knowledge that you guys have. It's always incredible to me because like you're taking care of the smallest animals, from a meerkat all the way to an elephant, herbivores, carnivores, omnivores, everything in between, reptiles, birds, fish. Yeah, we have fish here at the zoo, everything in between, and I just can't imagine. I think it's hard in our department, and we're mostly mammals. Like
it's a lot to know. Yeah. Do you have a favorite animal? Just in general, not necessarily that you like work on or train with, or.
I've always been a huge fan of like the big cats.
Okay.
I've always been like a cat person, but I have a secret love for the meerkats so much.
Oh, I didn't know that. Well, that's good to know.
I walk past them and I get so excited because I'm like, look, they love me. They love me so much. And I'm like, no, I just have a zoo uniform on. That's all they care about. Like, am I getting fed?
I love that you say that because they're my favorites, but also because they are one of the very few animals at the zoo that responds to a uniform. Like, you could walk by the giraffe, and I have no doubt that, like, Tessa, Zoe, they know who I am. They know that I take care of them. I don't think they, like, seek me out. They wouldn't even glance my way if I walked by, but if I come in the building, they will feel more comfortable with me than a stranger off the street, right? So they know me in that sense. The hippos, they love people. They come over, but if I walk by, they don't, like, come swimming, running over towards us. But the meerkats, they're like, zoo uniform, I'm running to you, and they just want food, but they make you feel so special.
They do, and I was like, they make me feel so loved.
Yes,
and I love it.
Not many animals come running towards people, so and they can differ though. If I come in without a uniform on, they don't run towards me. If the public comes by, they don't run, so they know what a uniform means. They do have great vision, so that probably helps. But they do make you feel special.
They do, and that's why I like it, I think.
What about like as far as animals that you do training alongside the keepers with? Is there a particular animal that's like rewarding or challenging in some aspect? Like, I know for some animals it can be like quite a process to get them like habituated to being used to you guys coming around. Like, I don't know, I think like the giraffe are so sketchy sometimes. They're so sketchy about new people, but yeah, like
I would say in general, for me, I think that the primates can be really difficult. Like the big great apes can be difficult to work with, and not difficult in a sense of like they're just difficult. They're just so intelligent that like you kind of have to be like 15 steps ahead of them because they already know like why you're there. They know what you're doing, and so that can be challenging. But they're, like I said, they're just so smart.
Yeah.
And so, like, they outsmart us 99% of the time.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were talking to Ashley, one of the primate keepers, and a few episodes ago, and it's like, you might think they'd be the easiest to train because they're the most intelligent, but because they're the most intelligent, they can be some of the hardest to train because they know when a new person, but they see you often enough that you bring shots. And you know, where a meerkat wouldn't know that you bring, you know, a shot or a syringe or whatever, you know, that sort of thing. Yeah. So they can be a little more weary.
With that.
Yeah. But I'd say they're challenging. Rewarding, I think, in general for, like, our whole staff was when we went through and vaccinated a lot of our species with the COVID vaccine and follow up with the booster vaccines, too. That was a huge challenge and, like, a huge task, and just for what we were able to do to get done for most of the susceptible species, but also species that we were just worried about the public being around, too, was a huge win. And I just think, like, of all the training that we've done, like, that was a huge task. Because I think the animal health team came together, the keepers were like, we have to get this done, it's got to be done, we've got to do it, and, like, it was just this huge, giant teamwork thing that happened, and it was felt good.
Right, yeah, that's such a good point. And one of the things with that, I could be wrong, because I have a bad memory, but you had to do, like, you had to use a certain number of vials in a certain number of days or hours, right? So it's not like you could just do giraffe this week, the gorillas next week. Like, you had to get a whole bunch done at once.
It was like a 10 milliliter vial, so it essentially had 10 doses. So we had to plan to vaccinate 10 animals that day.
Or it would go to waste.
Yes. And it wasn't like those vaccines were just easy to come across either, so kind of had to work hard for them.
Had to decide as a zoo, not like us, but as a zoo had to decide like which animals would get them too. So that was, you only have a limited supply. Right. They weren't giving you as much as you...
Yeah, and the challenge with that was, especially with the great apes, that when we were trying to vaccinate them, if they didn't want to participate in the vaccine schedule that we made, if they didn't want to participate in that day, then we kind of had to have like 3 backup plans as, okay, then, we're going to try this animal next. If they don't want to participate, then we're going to move to this animal. And so it was just this huge like maze of making things work. So it worked out, and like I will always remember that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And it was really impressive because, remind me on the timeline, but I know you had to give, just like with humans, you had to get one series, and then there was, 6 or 8 weeks in between?
It was 3 weeks.
3 weeks, okay.
Yeah.
3 weeks in between and another. And, that's
gain
a short turnaround.
Back.
Yeah, exactly.
To gain trust back.
Exactly. Gaining that trust back on those animals that you just gave a vaccine to that maybe didn't feel that great. They're going to be like, this person was just here, and they just poked me. And now I'm going to have to do this again. Yeah. So that was challenging, but, we did it. And we're going to have to do it again.
So is there anything, before we wrap up and do trivia, that you want to tell us? Or anything that you're really proud of? Or if you were giving advice to somebody who might be looking into this? Anything we missed you want to chat about?
I would just say there's a ton of positions kind of open across the zoo for vet techs. If you are wanting to pursue something with a career, keep pushing for it and keep working towards it, whether it's volunteering, internships, doing something like that, because that's how you're going to gain the experience, but that's also how an employer, potential zoo, is going to look at you, and they're going to want you to have that experience. So whether you're touching base with your local tech school program, or you're reaching out to your local zoos, or even finding internship programs, because most every zoo does an internship program for vet techs, so just reaching out, trying to communicate with somebody.
See, I don't even think I knew that. I didn't realize that there were, I know you guys get interns sometimes, but I didn't realize it was an actual position that's, put out there. Okay.
Yep.
That's great. So, if you're interested, as usual, zookeeping, being a vet tech, being a veterinarian, if you want to work with exotic animals, try and get into a zoo volunteer internship program.
You're going to have to work for free at some point. Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's just the way it is. But it's worth it in the end.
Yes, exactly.
And you did say something. You mentioned something interesting at the start of the show that I wanted to ask you about. I don't know how much knowledge you have about it, but I always think it's really interesting when I talk to veterinarians or vet techs. the different laws and rules that are available, like state to state, having worked in a couple different states, is that something that you have a lot of experience with?
I just know that Ohio tends to be a little bit more strict with their laws.
Okay.
And California is one. And a few states just require a little bit more education, or passing the national boards, essentially, and being a licensed veterinarian. Because I hold licenses in the state of Kentucky and Ohio.
Okay.
But, and it's only because I'm from Kentucky, but if you're practicing in a state as a registered technician, then you should be licensed in that state, and you can only get licensed if you have passed the national boards exam, which is required if you go to an accredited institution. But it is it's challenging though, because sometimes it's really frustrating. Because like I was born and raised, and I even worked in Northern Kentucky in small animal medicine, and I could do everything under the sun, like monitor anesthesia, give injections, and that sort of thing. But like as soon as you cross the river into Ohio, the rules change a little bit, and you aren't necessarily allowed to monitor anesthesia or give injections and things like that, depending on where you're at.
Even if you've been doing it for years or something. So
Yeah.
Which I think is good, because it kind of regulates. People use this term as like a generic, like I'm a vet tech, but there's a little bit of a difference between like being a licensed / registered / certified vet tech, rather than just like saying like I work in a small animal clinic.
Yeah, because there's like
Sure.
vet assistant, right,
Yes.
which wouldn't necessarily be registered or pass the national boards or
Exactly.
that sort of
Yeah.
thing.
Exactly. So like I did my due diligence. I went to school and I took this exam, which isn't all that easy to pass.
I'm sure.
I can imagine, yeah. Oh my gosh.
So it's I think they're working on making like a recognition for how do we group these people in a different manner, because people just assume we're technicians, but like what does that mean?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So it means like we're pharmacists, we're phlebotomists, we're laboratory technicians, we do all kinds of things. And so
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, when I had gotten into the field, I guess naively, I had just assumed, like, I understood that you had to be registered and accredited to work in an accredited institution, but I would just figured, like, it was a national exam, right? Like, you pass this national exam and you can work anywhere, but that's not the case. It's state to state, very specific, yeah.
some states require like you can pass the national boards exam, but if you want to work in like certain states, you have to take another test too.
Wow.
Which is silly, because I'm like, I passed the national boards exam. Like, why do I have to take another
Yes.
exam? But
Yeah, it's a lot, for sure.
Man.
Well, do you have any trivia?
I got some trivia if you guys are up for it.
Ready.
Janelle?
I guess so.
All right. We're obviously talking to a veterinary technician today, so trivia's veterinary focused.
Oh boy.
Jenna, if you're up for it.
I'm always up to embarrass myself, Mark.
And in tradition to embarrass Jenna, we had to have a couple questions that talk about years, just to get Jenna's timeline
I'm really
on
bad
things.
at guessing when history happened.
So speaking of history, veterinary history, in what year was the first veterinary school founded? The first official veterinary
Is
school.
it Purdue University?
It is not Purdue
Don't
University.
laugh. That's cool.
It's not Purdue
That's a
University.
good guess.
But that's not what you're asking, though. Your year.
In what year?
I just thought
If
I
you
might be
know
able to
the-
get that part of the answer.
Fair enough. I was saying, I'll give you bonus points if you know the school. Like, bonus points, because,
Is it
points
in
are
the
very
1800s?
important. I don't know. It's a good question.
1917.
1917
That's my
for
random
Jenna.
guess.
I feel like it's
Janelle?
earlier than that. I'm going to say like 1875.
You guys are both a little late.
Oh.
I guess
Almost-
if the zoo opened, I don't know when.
100 years late.
That's right on
So the
track
first
for me.
vet school. So the first vet school opened in 1761
No, it didn't.
by, I'm gonna butcher his name, Claude Bergelat. I'm gonna go with Bergelat on the pronunciation. Your years are just as bad as my pronunciation.
Look at your notes. That would give me the next question. Oh my god.
What school was it?
And it was the Royal Vet School. The
Oh,
Royal Vet
in
School
England.
in England. Yes.
Okay,
Oh,
okay.
jeez.
Yes.
I wasn't thinking over
I was
there.
thinking like nationally, not internationally. 17 what?
I should have specified 1761.
Wow.
1761.
I'm going to take this back to my vets and be like, hey, do you know when
Yes.
the first vet school was
I
established?
want to know if any of them know the answer.
I'll be impressed. All right, on to question number 2. This was just in my veterinary research, just something that I was totally unaware of. I'm clearly very naive when it comes to veterinary medicine. Keep that in mind. But apparently, in common practice with small animal medicine, with cats and dogs, there's only one organ that is commonly transplanted. Do you know what organ it is? I was naive. I was like, right, like humans can get all kinds of organs transplanted. Surely dogs and cats
kidney?
can
That's
too.
going to be my guess.
It is
like
kidney.
Yeah.
It is the kidney. What's the reason for this? Do you know?
A lot of older cats, just like in the exotic population, they tend to develop kidney disease fairly early. And so I think it's not done very often. And it's quite a lot of money to pay for like a kidney
How do you
transplant.
find the donor?
I don't know how the science works behind all of that because I've never ever been a part of it. But I've heard stories of like them doing like kidney transplants. I just assume that it would be from like a healthy cat.
Well, this is what I mean. I wonder if people are using like one pet. Do you go get another? Oh my gosh, this is a weird topic.
It is.
Do you go buy another cat or dog and you're like, you're going to be a donor? That's a weird.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's like someone's pet that may have been like traumatically.
Like, can you sign your animal up to be a
I don't think so.
donor?
I don't know how that works. But I
didn't expect you to know, but I'm just looking
I've
at you
gotta
while I
do
ask
some
these
more
questions.
research.
Now I have a lot of questions,
Yeah.
and it's kind of dark. But I was going to guess kidney just because there's two of them. So I was like, oh, that would be... It's usually, from all the medical dramas that I watch, none of my educational history. I'd be like, oh, yes, kidneys are probably the easiest organ. Oh, man, I've never thought about
For
that.
what it's worth, you've clearly learned more in your medical drama than I did, because I would not have guessed kidney. I was like, yeah, surely they can do heart transplants.
Where'd you?
I don't know. I don't know where it would come from, but it was like they do it for humans, right?
That's
so
true.
like you hear stories of like a human getting a pig heart,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
It's like,
Yeah.
why wouldn't they
I just
do
don't think that there's a lot of research probably behind it.
Yeah.
Like, and not everyone can, because like, I mean, you're talking like probably $20,000 if I were like as like a pet owner to
Sure.
go to like a surgeon to be like, can you can you replace this kidney?
And
for
how
me?"
many... They aren't doing
Yeah.
it often, so I
No,
wonder
it's
how
not
many
a lot.
veterinary surgeons
Not
would...
a lot.
They've got to be
Yeah.
specialized, yeah.
To be a
Don't get me
really
wrong, my
special
cats
animal.
are priceless. I'd give them the world, but I don't know if I have $20,000
Right.
for a kidney
For a new
transplant.
kidney.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
My gosh. All right.
Now I want to find someone to come on the podcast and talk to us about that.
We got to find a special
Gosh.
kidney transplant surgeon. All right, question number 3. This is our last question for today. My favorite doctor, veterinary doctor.
Dr. Seuss.
Doctor, you're close. Dr. Doolittle.
That's even better. Okay.
I always loved Dr. Doolittle
Yeah.
growing up because it's like I'm sure anyone in the zoo
Right.
field like
Yeah.
watched and enjoyed Dr. Doolittle. It'd be the coolest thing ever. I always think of how easier your jobs would be, right? As vet techs, if you could just ask the animal,
And ours.
"Hey,
Yeah.
what's wrong?"
Yeah, exactly.
So Dr. Doolittle, in what year he was started by the book The Story of Dr. Doolittle by Hugh Lofting. In what year was this book published? The Story of Dr. Doolittle.
Mark.
When I was growing up, I thought the only Dr. Doolittle was Eddie Murphy.
Yeah.
But
I wanna get
apparently
that
he's been
movie
around
now.
for a
I
while.
haven't seen it in decades.
I feel like it's an early book.
But what's early? Clearly, I don't know what early is.
I think like 1930s, but I don't know.
1930 for
I
Janelle.
I always go too recent, so I'm gonna throw a wild card and say 1850.
1850. Janelle's pretty close.
Of course.
The book, The
I'm-
Story of Dr. Doolittle by Hugh Lofting was published in 1920.
Oh,
Wow, you were really
1920.
I was like, I thought
close.
it was like a really like an old story.
1920. So Dr. Doolittle's
100
been
years
practicing
old,
medicine
yeah.
for 100 years. Props to him. Props to him.
Seen medicine for 100 years. Oh man, I really nailed that quiz. I'm gonna do trivia next time and make it really hard
I was
for
gonna
you.
say. Just embarrassing.
I like these trivia questions.
Yeah,
I
it's
could
fun.
sit here and answer those all day long.
I'm really good at getting
Oh,
them really
man.
wrong. Okay, well, Janelle, we've had a lot of fun. I've learned a lot about your job, even though I feel like I should have already known a lot about it. But if there was one thing that someone could do at home or at work or something to be a better steward of the earth, my question is, what can I do?
Well, I would say, at our department level, so our animal health team, like we do work pretty hard trying to recycle as much as we can, and sometimes you think some of the medical supplies that we use, we do waste a lot of plastic and things like that. So we do our part by kind of like breaking things down, cleaning things, breaking down shipping materials, because we get shipments in a lot and we ship things out a lot. So we do our part by like reusing boxes to ship other things out to the lab. Yeah. We also do break down a lot of like styrofoam or plastic bubble wrap kind of mailers and things like that, and we do our best to recycle those at the hospital level. And I know the zoo has a huge recycling program as well. But I think that that's one thing, is just kind of maybe looking at what you can do better for yourself at home, and breaking things down a little bit more.
Yeah, definitely, because some things you wouldn't assume that you can recycle, and it's much easier to throw them in the trash for sure. But like, if you wanted to start at work and do it as a group level, so you can recycle these things, but sometimes they have to be taken to a specific facility, or, your local Kroger or somewhere might recycle something that you can't just throw in the regular, like, weekly pickup.
Yeah, like the single-use plastics especially.
Yes,
right? Yeah.
Exactly. But yeah, that's a good one if you guys are working as a group to do those things, and then making sure it gets to the right recycling plant or place. Somebody in an office setting that gets all sorts of things mailed to them, they could take that on. We encourage that. 2023, we encourage you, if you work in some sort of office, or you could do it at home if you get a lot of packages. But to maybe start like an office, like, what is it? TerraCycling? I should know this, but I don't.
TerraCycle, right?
TerraCycle, right? Yeah. Or things that aren't necessarily able to go on just a regular recycling.
Mm-hmm.
You start a program at your place of work.
And yeah, like you said, even at home, like that's more like present than ever, right? Who doesn't get packages from Amazon once a week at this point? Like, I'm ashamed to say it, but I do. So it's like we can all do a better job at that, just in your own life at home, and especially with the holidays just having passed, I'm sure people are getting shipments all over the country.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, things that you wouldn't necessarily think you can recycle, like putting in a little bit extra effort to do those bigger things. Yeah. Oh man, there's so much to do. So much to recycle.
I know. It never stops.
I just started thinking about all the packages we got over the last month. And, well, anyways, thank you. That's a good one. Thanks for being here and talking to us. And I know you're busy, and we appreciated it.
Well, thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Good.
Definitely. We're looking forward to next time you come and work with some of our animals. Well, I should say, hopefully they're healthy, and you're just coming to train with us. Yes. Just a training session.
Well, now I know I'll have to bring you on some meerkat training so you can come see them.
Oh my gosh, I would love that.
All right, well, thanks for listening, everyone. Have a great day.
Yeah, take care. Until next time.